The elderly woman collapsed beside Claire's car, while a black sedan silently blocked the only garage exit. Claire Bennett dropped her tote bag before it hit the concrete and caught the stranger beneath the arms. The fluorescent tubes overhead buzzed with a sickly white light, reflecting off rows of parked cars and the polished hood of her aging Honda. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The woman's breath came in short, uneven pulls. Her charcoal wool coat felt expensive beneath Claire's fingers, but her skin was cold. A faint trace of rose perfume mixed with gasoline and damp concrete. Claire glanced at the digital clock above the elevator doors. 2:17 a.m. Her 12-hour ER shift had ended 7 minutes ago. Apparently, the night had other plans. "My name is Claire. I'm a nurse." She loosened the woman's scarf and checked her pulse. "Do you have chest pain?" "No," the stranger swallowed carefully. "Just trouble breathing." "Asthma? Heart condition?" "Sometimes." Claire reached for her phone. "I'm calling the ER. We're 50 yards from an entire building full of people who enjoy ruining their sleep schedules." The woman caught her wrist. A heavy gold ring pressed against Claire's skin. "No ambulance." Claire stared at her. "You collapsed in a parking garage. Please, just help me inside." Claire almost argued. Then headlights moved across the concrete wall behind them. The black sedan had been parked near the exit when Claire entered the garage after her shift. Now it rolled forward 10 feet and stopped again. Engine running. Windows dark. Claire's attention shifted back to the woman. She had seen it too. Her fingers tightened around Claire's wrist. "Is that car yours?" Claire asked. "No, do you know who's inside?" The woman's gaze stayed fixed on the sedan. "My name is Lucia Romano." Not an answer. Claire slid one arm around Lucia's waist and helped her stand. "Okay, Lucia. We're going inside. You should leave me here." That stopped being an option when you hit the floor. Lucia managed 2 steps before her knees weakened. Claire adjusted her grip and took more of her weight. Her own sneakers squeaked against the smooth concrete as they moved toward the elevator. Lobby. Behind them, the sedan began moving again. Slowly, Claire pressed the elevator button. Nothing. She hit it twice more. The floor indicator remained dark. Of course. She looked toward the stairwell, then at Lucia's breathing. 7 flights up was impossible. The pedestrian ramp leading to the emergency entrance was nearly 100 yards away. Claire turned toward it. "We walk." "Claire." Lucia had read the name embroidered on her scrub top. "Listen to me. You don't understand what you're stepping into." Claire pulled Lucia's arm more securely across her shoulders. "I understand oxygen saturation, respiratory distress, and the fact that you're getting worse." The sedan's tires whispered behind them. Claire didn't look back this time. She moved faster. At the end of the garage, the harsh fluorescent light gave way to the warmer glow spilling from the hospital's emergency canopy. Automatic doors waited ahead. 30 yards. 20. Lucia stumbled. Claire caught her. 10. The sedan suddenly accelerated. Claire twisted around, placing herself instinctively between Lucia and the approaching vehicle. Instead of striking them, the sedan swept across the ramp and stopped sideways, blocking the driveway. A rear door opened. A man in a dark coat stepped out. Claire immediately pulled Lucia backward toward the emergency doors. "Do you know him?" Lucia's breathing sharpened. No, that answer was enough. Claire slapped the emergency call button mounted beside the entrance. A buzzer sounded inside. The man took 1 step toward them, then stopped as another engine roared from the street. 3 black SUVs turned beneath the hospital canopy in perfect formation. Doors opened almost simultaneously. Men in dark suits spilled onto the pavement. From the center vehicle emerged a tall man in a black overcoat, broad-shouldered and controlled, his attention cutting through everyone around him until it landed on Lucia. "Mother." Lucia sagged against Claire. "Adrian." Claire looked from the older woman to Adrian Romano as he crossed toward them, every armed man around him moving according to his pace. Then Lucia suddenly gripped Claire's hand. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Stay behind, my son." Claire glanced toward the stranger beside the sedan. His right hand had disappeared beneath his coat. "No," she said, pulling Lucia behind her instead. The man's hand came out of his coat, and Claire saw the weapon before Adrian's guards did. "Down," she shouted, twisting around and forcing Lucia toward the concrete wall. The first sharp crack echoed beneath the hospital canopy, swallowed almost immediately by shouting and the screech of shoes against wet pavement. Adrian's men surged forward, But Claire saw only Lucia, the older woman frozen beneath the fluorescent glare, her oxygen-starved breaths turning shallow again. Another crack split the air. Claire wrapped both arms around Lucia and turned her own body toward the sound. Something struck Claire with enough force to steal her balance. She stumbled but stayed upright. Claire. Lucia's voice sounded distant. Adrian was running toward them now, his black overcoat flaring behind him. His guards formed a moving wall between the women and the sedan, but Claire caught another glimpse of the attacker shifting position near the vehicle. His arm rose again. Lucia was exposed. Claire made the decision before anyone could stop her. She shoved Lucia behind a thick concrete support column and stepped directly into the open space she had occupied. The next impact knocked Claire backward. Her shoulder struck the column, cold concrete scraping through her scrubs. She heard Lucia scream her name. Then Adrian caught her before she reached the pavement. "Get my mother inside." His command cut through the chaos. Two guards immediately surrounded Lucia. "No." Claire caught Adrian's lapel, her fingers slipping against smooth wool. "She can't breathe." Adrian looked toward his mother. Lucia was conscious but struggling, one hand pressed against her chest. "Oxygen," Claire forced out. "ER. Now." Adrian's jaw locked. "Move." The automatic doors opened, releasing warm air thick with disinfectant. Hospital staff rushed forward with two stretchers. Claire tried to stand. Her knees refused. Adrian's arm tightened around her back. "Don't. I work here. Not tonight. Your mother is being treated because of you." He lifted Claire onto the stretcher himself. Bright ceiling panels began passing above her as nurses pushed her through the emergency department. Wheels rattled over tile. Monitors chirped behind curtains. The familiar hospital smells of sanitizer, plastic, and stale coffee should have grounded her, but everything seemed strangely far away. Adrian walked beside the stretcher. "Name," a nurse called. "Claire Bennett." Claire answered. 28. "No medication allergies." "Where were you hit?" Claire looked down at her navy scrubs. A dark stain was spreading near her side. She pressed her palm against it automatically. Adrian caught her wrist. "Don't. Pressure helps." "Then let them do it." The nurse cut through the fabric while another placed an oxygen cannula beneath Claire's nose. Adrian stopped at the trauma room doors only when a physician blocked him. "Sir, you cannot come farther." Adrian looked past him at Claire. "I'm staying. You can stay outside." The doors swung shut between them. For the first time since arriving, Adrian Romano had nothing to command. He stood beneath harsh white lights while muffled medical voices moved behind the doors. Lucia appeared minutes later in a wheelchair, oxygen flowing beneath her nose. "Adrian." He turned immediately. "You're all right." Lucia nodded. "Because she made sure I was." Adrian looked back toward the trauma room. "She saw him before any of us." "That isn't what I mean." Lucia reached for his hand. "When she could have run, she covered me." Adrian's gaze dropped to his palm. A thin streak of Claire's blood marked his skin. Beyond the doors, someone called for surgery. The words changed the entire corridor. Adrian stepped toward the trauma room entrance. One of his men approached quickly. "Boss, the shooter's vehicle is moving east. We can still catch. Let it go." The guard stopped. Lucia looked up at her son. Adrian removed his phone and handed it over. "Every man we have comes here." "Sir." "No pursuit. No retaliation tonight." His eyes remained fixed on the doors through which Claire had disappeared. "Secure my mother. Secure the surgical floor. Nobody gets near Claire Bennett without my approval." The guard hesitated. "She isn't family." Adrian slowly turned toward him, Claire's blood still visible across his hand. "She put her life between death and my mother." His voice dropped until the corridor went silent around it. "Until she walks out of this hospital, treat her as if she carries my name." The operating room lights stayed red while Adrian Romano dismantled his own priorities one order at a time. He stood beneath the cold fluorescent glare outside surgery, jacket discarded across a vinyl chair, his white shirt carrying a faint dark smear where he had held Claire against him. The corridor smelled of antiseptic and burnt coffee, and every few seconds the elevator chimed behind two silent Romano guards. The eastbound sedan disappeared near the interstate. One of Adrian's men said, "We can put teams on every exit." Adrian never looked away from the surgical doors. "No, boss. Bring those teams back. We may lose them." Adrian turned then, slowly enough that the man stopped speaking. Claire Bennett is in surgery because she protected my mother while trained men failed to reach her first. Nobody leaves this hospital to chase anything. He pointed toward the secured hallway. Lock down this floor. Verify every employee who comes through those elevators. Nobody approaches Claire or my mother without clearance. The guard nodded and left. Across the corridor, Lucia sat beneath a gray hospital blanket with oxygen tubing beneath her nose. Adrian crossed to her, crouched, and checked the portable tank himself. You should be resting. Lucia touched the dried mark on his cuff. So should you. I wasn't shot. No. You only watched someone take what was meant for me. Adrian's hand stopped on the oxygen regulator. Lucia looked toward the red light above surgery. She had never met you. I know. She barely knew me. I know. Then remember that when she wakes up and you're tempted to turn gratitude into control. Adrian rose without answering. Nearly an hour later, the operating room doors opened with a soft pneumatic hiss. A surgeon stepped out, removing his cap. Adrian crossed the distance before Lucia's wheelchair could move. Claire. Stable, the surgeon said. The injury required surgery, but we controlled it. She'll need close monitoring tonight. Adrian's shoulders lowered by less than an inch. When can I see her? When recovery clears her. Move her to a private room beside my mother. The surgeon's expression hardened. Mr. Romano, she's my patient, not your employee. Adrian reached for his phone, then stopped. Lucia's warning still hung in the corridor. He put the phone back into his pocket. What is medically best for her? The surgeon studied him. A private recovery room would help. Quiet, limited visitors. Then that's what she gets. 2 hours later, Claire lay beneath a pale blanket in a dim room where the monitor cast green reflections across the window. Cool air whispered through the vent. Clean linen and sterile plastic replaced the gasoline smell of the garage that still seemed lodged in Adrian's memory. He stood outside the glass panel rather than entering. A nurse adjusted Claire's checked the monitor, and left. You can go in, Lucia said behind him. Adrian glanced toward his mother's wheelchair. She's unconscious. That has never stopped you from talking. He opened the door. The room seemed smaller once he stepped inside. Claire's face had lost its usual color, and her hands lay still above the blanket. The same hands that had dragged Lucia out of danger. Adrian pulled the visitor's chair closer, but remained standing. You were supposed to run, he said quietly. The monitor answered with its steady beep. You didn't know her. You didn't know me. His gaze settled on Claire's hand. You certainly didn't know what my name would bring to your door. He finally sat. Outside, footsteps approached. One of his men appeared at the glass and motioned urgently. Adrian stepped into the corridor. What? We need to relocate Mrs. Romano tonight. And Bennett should go somewhere else once she's stable. Keeping them together creates one target. Adrian looked through the window at Claire. No, boss, strategically, she wakes up here. Then we double security? Adrian considered the question, then reached for the access badge hanging from the guard's neck. Triple it. And I want this floor controlled from both stairwells. For how long? Adrian opened Claire's door again. Until she can walk away from me under her own power. The guard lowered his voice. You're reorganizing the Romano security detail around a woman you met tonight. Adrian stopped with one hand on the door. No, his eyes moved to Claire, motionless beneath the warm bedside light. I'm reorganizing it around the woman who decided my mother's life was worth more than her own. He entered the room and closed the door behind him. Then Adrian pulled the chair beside Claire's bed, placed his phone face down on the table, and made the first decision of his life that no Romano business, enemy, or command could interrupt. Until you open your eyes, he murmured, settling into the chair. I'm not leaving. Claire woke to the sound of Adrian Romano telling someone twice his size to leave her room. She needs rest, Adrian said, and the door clicked shut before the guard could answer. Morning light filtered through the blinds in narrow gold bands, warming the edge of Claire's blanket while cool air whispered from the ceiling vent. Her mouth tasted dry and metallic. Somewhere beside her, an infusion pump clicked with mechanical precision, and the room carried the clean sting of antiseptic mixed with coffee. Claire opened her eyes. Adrian stood near the door in yesterday's white shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, his black jacket nowhere in sight. How long? She asked. He turned immediately. Almost 11 hours since surgery. Claire tested a breath. stopped when her side tightened, then looked toward the connecting wall. Lucia? Stable. Sleeping next door. Her shoulders settled against the pillow. Adrian poured water into a paper cup and brought it over. Claire reached for it herself. He surrendered it without argument. You stayed. I said I would. She drank, then noticed the two men visible through the glass panel outside. Apparently, you brought half the city with you. There's security. They're armed. Both statements can be true. Claire lowered the cup. Who exactly are you? Adrian pulled the visitor's chair closer, but didn't sit. Adrian Romano. I know your name. Then you probably know enough. I'm an ER nurse, not an organized crime historian. His gaze remained steady. My family operates businesses people recognize and others they don't discuss. Claire looked toward the guards again. Mafia. Adrian didn't deny it. She reached for the bedside controls and raised herself several inches. Then remove your men from my door. No, Claire looked at him. That sounded suspiciously like an order. The people who attacked my mother saw you shield her. Until I know you're safe. Stop. Her voice was weak, but it cut cleanly through his sentence. I protected Lucia because she needed help. That does not make me property of the Romano family. Adrian's jaw tightened. Nobody said property. You locked down my workplace, stationed armed men outside my room, and apparently decided when I'm allowed to leave. Because you were nearly killed. That still doesn't give you ownership of tomorrow. Claire pushed the blanket aside. Adrian stepped forward. What are you doing? Standing. Your surgeon said. My surgeon said assisted walking when tolerated. Her bare feet touched the cold floor. Pain pulled her breath short, but she gripped the bed rail and rose. Adrian's hand moved toward her elbow. Claire lifted one finger. Don't. His hand stopped in midair. She took one careful step toward the window, dragging the four-pole beside her. Then another. The wheels whispered over tile. Adrian stayed close enough to catch her, but never touched her. When Claire reached the window, she looked down. 3 black SUVs waited beneath the hospital canopy. Men in dark coats stood at both entrances. That's not protection, she said. That's occupation. You want them gone? From my door, yes. I won't leave you unprotected. Claire turned carefully. Then we negotiate. Adrian actually blinked. Negotiate. One guard at the elevator. Hospital security handles this hallway. My doctors decide my medical care. I decide who enters my room, where I go after discharge, and whether I accept anything from you. You're bargaining with a man you just identified as a mafia boss. You're bargaining with the nurse who saved your mother. Silence stretched between them, filled by the monitor's measured beeping and the distant rattle of a breakfast cart. Then Adrian opened the door. Everyone off this hallway, he told his men. One guard frowned. Boss, elevator only. Hospital security takes the floor. The men obeyed. Claire watched them disappear around the corner. Adrian returned and closed the door. Satisfied? Surprised? Don't get used to it. A soft knock interrupted them. Lucia entered in a wheelchair, pale but composed, a cream robe around her shoulders. Her gaze moved from Claire standing beside the window to Adrian, keeping his distance. I see you two have met properly. Claire smiled faintly. Your son has boundary issues. Since childhood. Adrian exhaled. Mother. Lucia reached Claire and took her hand. You saved my life. I did my job. No, Lucia's gold ring pressed warmly against Claire's fingers. You did far more than your job. Adrian watched Claire lower herself carefully back onto the bed without asking him for help. When Lucia left, he placed a small black card on the bedside table. No money. No contract. Only his private number. If you want protection, call me. If you don't, I stay out of your decisions. Claire studied the card. And if I never call? Adrian moved toward the door, then stopped. Then I'll keep my word. Claire picked up the card before he could leave. Adrian. He turned. She held it between 2 fingers. One more condition. What? If you're going to protect me, you do it my way. Adrian looked at the woman who had already defied danger, surgery, and him within 12 hours. Then the most feared man in the Romano family gave Claire something almost nobody had ever received from him. He nodded. The hospital kitchen had closed hours ago, but Adrian Romano somehow found fresh chicken soup for his mother at 1:40 in the morning. Claire watched from Lucia's doorway as he set the ceramic bowl on the rolling tray, tested its temperature with the back of his finger, then adjusted the older woman's oxygen tubing where it had twisted against her cream robe. The room was dim except for an amber lamp beside the bed. Monitors pulsed green in the shadows, and the air smelled of warm broth, antiseptic, and the bitter espresso cooling in Adrian's untouched cup. "You're hovering," Lucia said. "Eat." That wasn't a denial. Adrian unfolded a napkin and placed it beside her spoon. Claire shifted her weight against the doorframe. Her side still pulled beneath the dressing whenever she moved too quickly, but watching the feared Romano boss fuss over sodium content had been worth the walk. Adrian noticed her. "You should be in bed." And there he is. Claire entered slowly. "I was wondering how long you could go without ordering someone around." Lucia smiled into her soup. Adrian dragged a chair out for Claire without comment. She sat. For several quiet minutes, he became nothing like the man whose guards had locked down the hospital. He checked Lucia's water, repositioned her blanket, lowered the lights when she squinted. When her oxygen monitor slipped from her finger, Adrian replaced it with such practiced care that Claire's gaze lingered on his hands. "You've done this before," she said. "She hates hospitals." "I hate being treated like glass," Lucia corrected. Claire glanced at Adrian. "Apparently that runs in the family." Lucia laughed softly, then coughed. Claire immediately leaned forward, but Adrian was already beside his mother. He didn't bark for doctors or summon guards. He steadied Lucia's shoulder while Claire raised the head of the bed and checked the oxygen flow. "Slow breath," Claire said. Again. Adrian watched Claire's face rather than the monitor, following every instruction she gave. Within a minute, Lucia's breathing settled. Adrian's hand remained on his mother's shoulder until she pushed it away. "I am breathing, Adrian." "I noticed." "Then stop staring at me like you can threaten my lungs into obedience." Claire covered a smile. Adrian caught it. "Something amusing?" "Very." His mouth almost moved at one corner. Later, after Lucia fell asleep, Adrian walked Claire back to her room. The corridor lights had been dimmed for the night, leaving polished tile glowing beneath blue emergency strips. Their footsteps sounded unusually loud in the quiet. Claire stopped halfway. "You really stayed here all day?" "Yes." "No meetings?" "Cancelled." "No mysterious Romano business?" "Delegated." Claire studied him. "Because of Lucia?" Adrian looked through the glass toward his sleeping mother. At first, Claire waited. Adrian's gaze returned to her. "Then because of you." The ventilation system hummed above them. Claire's fingers tightened slightly around the four-pole. "You don't owe me your life because I saved hers." "I know." "Do you?" "Claire." His voice dropped. "I have spent 20 years knowing exactly what people wanted from me before they entered a room. Money, access, protection, fear. You knew none of that when you saw my mother in that garage. She needed help." "Exactly." Adrian stepped closer, stopping before the distance became an intrusion. "You nearly died for someone whose last name meant nothing to you." Claire looked at the faint scar across his knuckle as his hand rested against the railing. "And now her last name means trouble." That earned a quiet laugh from her. The sound followed them into Claire's room. Adrian helped move the visitor's chair closer, then stopped himself before touching her as she climbed carefully into bed. Claire noticed. "You remembered. Your rules. That must be painful. More than the bulletproof vest." She looked at him sharply, then laughed again. From the connecting doorway came Lucia's voice. "Adrian." Both turned. Lucia stood there holding her oxygen cart, silver hair loose around her shoulders. "You have been sitting outside Claire's room more than mine, Mother. And you canceled everything today." Adrian's jaw tightened. Lucia looked directly at her son. "So answer one question before you call this gratitude again." Claire went still. Lucia's fingers tightened around the oxygen cart. "Are you protecting Claire because she saved my life?" she asked. "Or because somewhere between that garage and this hospital bed, you became unable to imagine losing hers?" Adrian looked at Claire. This time, he had no answer ready. Adrian placed a marriage license application on Claire's breakfast tray before she touched her coffee. The paper rested beside a sealed yogurt cup and plastic spoon, painfully, white beneath the morning sun pouring through the blinds, while the room smelled of fresh coffee, antiseptic, and the lilies Lucia had insisted someone bring upstairs. Claire looked at the document, then at Adrian. That better be someone else's. He stood opposite her bed in a charcoal suit, one hand resting on the tray rail. "Your photograph was circulated last night." Claire's fingers stopped around the warm paper cup. "Circulated where?" Among people who understand how my world works. Adrian placed his phone beside the license. On the screen was a photograph of Claire entering St. Vincent weeks earlier in navy scrubs, hospital badge visible against her chest. Across the image were 4 words, the Romano boss's weakness. Claire stared at it for 3 seconds, then turned the phone face down. So they know my name. They know more than that. And your answer is marriage? My answer is making the cost of touching you unbearable. Claire pushed the tray away. Its wheels squeaked softly across the tile. Explain. Adrian pulled the visitor's chair closer, but remained standing. People in my world understand certain boundaries. An associate can be pressured. A witness can disappear. Someone under temporary protection can be tested. His eyes held hers. My wife is Romano family. An attack on her is an attack on the entire organization. Claire looked at the signature line. So you want to turn me into a warning label? I want you alive. That wasn't what I asked. Adrian's jaw shifted. Marriage would give you the strongest protection my name can provide. Claire threw back the blanket and stood carefully. Pain tugged beneath her bandage, but she ignored his instinctive step toward her. You promised to do this my way. I am giving you a choice. No, you're giving me a security arrangement with wedding vows attached. She picked up the application and pressed it against his chest. I didn't shield your mother because I wanted access to the Romano name. Adrian took the paper but said nothing. And I'm not marrying you because criminals decided I'm useful leverage. The connecting door opened. Lucia entered slowly with her oxygen cart, the wheels whispering. Over polished tile. She looked from Claire to the document in Adrian's hand. You asked her badly, didn't you? Mother, did you mention protection before love? Adrian's silence answered. Lucia sighed. Then you asked her very badly. Claire returned to the bed, lowering herself onto the mattress. There was no love mentioned. Lucia looked at her son. Exactly. Adrian stared at the license. Then he tore it cleanly in half. Claire blinked. He tore the pieces again and dropped them into the trash. What are you doing? She asked. Keeping my promise. Adrian took his phone from the tray and made one call. Increase exterior security. Claire remains under protection, but nobody enters this room without her permission. No restrictions on her discharge. No relocation unless she agrees. He ended the call. Claire studied him. And the marriage? Not like this. Adrian moved closer, stopping several feet from her bed. I can protect you without owning your choices. If you leave St. Vincent and never want to see me again, my people will keep their distance and still make sure you're safe. Lucia quietly backed toward the connecting room. Claire noticed, but didn't stop her. Then why bring the license at all? Adrian looked at the torn pieces in the trash. Because when I learned they had your photograph, my first thought wasn't strategy. The monitor beside Claire gave a soft, regular beep. What was it? That someone might take you away before I understood what you've become to me. Claire's hand tightened around the blanket. Adrian reached into his pocket and placed a small velvet box on the tray, but did not open it. I won't ask today. Why not? Because today you might say yes because you're afraid. He stepped back. If I ever marry you, Claire Bennett, I want your answer to have nothing to do with bullets, enemies, debts, or my mother. Claire looked from the velvet box to him. And when will you ask? Adrian opened the door. Morning light caught the edge of his face as he stopped there. When I can stand beside your hospital bed, offer you nothing but myself, and know that's enough. The fire doors slammed shut with Lucia on the wrong side and Claire, already moving toward her. Red emergency lights pulsed across the private floor, turning the white walls crimson every 2 seconds, while an alarm hammered overhead and the bitter smell of electrical smoke drifted from the service corridor. Lucia's oxygen cart had caught beneath the descending door. She gripped its handle, coughing. Mother! Adrian crossed the hallway. Claire reached the emergency release first. Her line is trapped. Claire, stay back. Not while she's losing oxygen. Claire yanked the metal lever. Nothing. She wrapped both hands around it and pulled harder, pain tightening beneath her bandage. The mechanism released with a violent click. Adrian seized the door and forced it upward 18 inches. Claire dropped to her knees and slid through. Claire! Adrian's voice followed her. She reached Lucia, disconnected the crushed tubing, and grabbed the portable oxygen cylinder mounted beneath the cart. Cold metal bit into her palm. Look at me, Lucia. She attached the backup line and fitted the cannula beneath Lucia's nose. Slow breaths. Lucia caught Claire's wrist. You should not keep saving me. You should stop making it necessary. A faint smile crossed Lucia's face before another cough erased it. Adrian forced the door higher and stepped through. Then footsteps sounded beyond the smoke. A man emerged near the stairwell in a dark suit. Adrian stopped. Claire recognized him as one of the Romano guards who had been stationed downstairs. The man raised his hands. It's finished, Adrian. Adrian moved between him and the women. You opened the hospital to them. You made yourself vulnerable. The man's gaze shifted toward Claire. First your mother, now a nurse. Adrian's voice became dangerously quiet. Her name is Claire. More Romano guards appeared from the opposite stairwell, trapping the man between them. For one suspended moment, Adrian had him. The person who had turned the hospital into a hunting ground stood 20 feet away with nowhere to go. Then Claire's hand slipped from Lucia's shoulder. She staggered. Claire. Lucia caught her arm. Claire pressed her palm against her side. Warmth spread beneath the dressing. Adrian turned. At the sound of her name, the betrayer laughed softly. Go ahead, Adrian. Walk away now, and you'll never get what you want from me. Adrian looked at him, then at Claire. His decision took less than a heartbeat. Take him alive, he ordered the guards. Boss, you'll want a question, not anymore. Adrian crossed the corridor as Claire's knees buckled. He caught her before she hit the tile. Look at me. Claire tried. The red lights blurred across his face. Lucia? Safe. Make sure. I will. Adrian lifted Claire carefully into his arms. Behind him, the betrayer shouted his name, offering information, names, everything Adrian had spent days trying to reach. Adrian never turned around. You're letting him go? Claire whispered. No. I'm letting someone else have him. You wanted answers. I want you breathing. He carried her through the fire doors as medical staff rushed toward them. The clean scent of antiseptic replaced the smoke, and white ceiling lights flashed above Claire as Adrian placed her onto a stretcher. Possible wound complication, Claire managed automatically. Blood pressure dropping, a nurse called. Dr. Patel appeared at the treatment room entrance. Get her inside. Claire's fingers tightened around Adrian's sleeve. He walked beside the stretcher until the door stopped him. You had the man who did this, she said. Adrian leaned close. And I chose you. Because I saved your mother? He shook his head. That debt could never explain this. The monitor beside her accelerated. Staff began pulling the stretcher away. Adrian caught her hand for one final second. When you fell, I didn't think about revenge. I didn't think about my name. I thought about every morning I might never get to see you wake up. Claire stared at him beneath the harsh fluorescent light. Adrian, I'm here. Her grip weakened, but she did not release him until the stretcher began moving. The question you wouldn't ask yesterday. Adrian went completely still. Claire's mouth curved faintly despite the oxygen mask being lowered toward her face. When I wake up, she whispered, ask me again. Claire woke to Adrian holding the unopened velvet ring box in one hand, and her fingers in the other. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, warming the white blanket across her legs, while the heart monitor kept a steady rhythm beside her, and the room carried the clean scent of antiseptic and fresh lilies. Adrian's charcoal suit was wrinkled. His collar hung open. A paper cup of coffee sat untouched beside him. Claire moved her thumb against his hand. His head lifted instantly. You're awake. You're still here. I told you where I belong. Claire glanced toward the connecting door. Lucia? Safe. Complaining that her breakfast has no salt. Claire exhaled softly. And the man from the hallway? Alive. In custody. The people who helped him have been removed from my organization. The hospital is secure. Adrian set the ring box on the bedside table without opening it. None of that matters right now. Claire looked at him. Yesterday it would have. Yesterday, I thought finishing the fight would protect you. He leaned closer, forearms resting on his knees. Then you collapsed, and I walked away from the man responsible without looking back. You chose me. I'll keep choosing you. The connecting door opened quietly. Lucia appeared in a wheelchair wearing a pale cream cardigan, her oxygen cannula beneath her nose. Good, she said. She's awake. Now perhaps my son will remember how human conversation works. Adrian gave his mother a look. Claire smiled. He's improving. Lucia rolled beside the bed and placed a hand over Claire's. You saved me twice. I'm officially retiring from that job. Excellent. I would prefer you stay in this family without requiring emergency surgery. Claire's gaze shifted toward Adrian. Lucia followed it, smiled, and wheeled herself toward the window. Adrian picked up the velvet box. Yesterday you told me to ask again. I remember. Before I do, you need to hear this without danger attached to it. He opened the box. Inside was a simple diamond ring, elegant rather than extravagant. I'm not asking because you protected my mother. I'm not asking because my name can protect you. And I'm not asking because anyone expects repayment for what you did. He took the ring from the box, but kept it. In his palm. You can return to your apartment. Return to the ER when your doctors clear you. Argue with me every morning for the next 50 years if necessary. That sounds exhausting. I'm prepared. Claire's mouth curved. Adrian's voice lowered. When everything around me became noise, revenge, loyalty, power, you were the one thing I couldn't walk away from. Claire Bennett, will you marry me? The monitor marked 3 slow beats. Claire held out her left hand. Yes. Adrian closed his eyes for half a second, then slid the ring onto her finger. Lucia immediately turned from the window. Good. Because I already called Father Michael. Claire stared at her. You what? I raised a stubborn man. Preparation became necessary. 2 hours later, Claire remained propped against fresh pillows in a simple white hospital robe. Late morning light filled the room, catching the lilies and polished bed rail in gold. Father Michael stood beside the bed with a small book in his hands. Lucia waited nearby as witness, and even Adrian's guards remained outside. There were no armored cars in the room, no whispered orders, no symbols of Romano power. Only Adrian standing beside Claire's hospital bed, holding her hand. I do, Claire said. Adrian slid the wedding band beside her engagement ring. His thumb lingered over her knuckles. I do. He bent and kissed her forehead as Lucia wiped beneath one eye and pretended she hadn't. Several days later, Adrian pushed Claire's wheelchair through St. Vincent's main entrance. The automatic doors whispered open, releasing them into warm afternoon sunlight. Lucia walked beside them, stronger now, one hand resting briefly on Claire's shoulder. Black Romano vehicles waited at the curb, but Adrian stopped before reaching them. Claire looked up. What? He came around the wheelchair and offered his hand instead. Your way. Claire took it and rose carefully. Together they crossed the same hospital threshold where she had once placed her life between his mother and danger. She had entered Adrian Romano's world as a stranger willing to die for someone he loved, and she left the hospital as his wife because he had finally learned that love was not the power to own another life, but the promise to stand beside it. A fearless ER nurse risks her life to shield Lucia Romano from a deadly attack, never expecting the woman's powerful son to change her future forever. Adrian Romano, a feared mafia boss accustomed to loyalty, danger, and control, becomes fiercely protective of Claire Bennett after her extraordinary sacrifice. As threats follow them into the hospital, Claire challenges Adrian's ruthless world while he discovers that protecting her means more than commanding guards. Their dangerous connection grows into trust, devotion, and an unforgettable mafia romance, culminating in a heartfelt hospital wedding where sacrifice becomes love and 2 strangers finally choose each other for life.